How you doing? This is Coffee Break with Jimmy. We've talked about socialism so much till you get tired of hearing the word socialism. But the other day, Jesse Waters had interview with that Al Saeed guy running for senator in in Michigan, and I think the guy buried himself personally. He didn't answer any questions. He talked a lot. He kept avoiding answers and some of the questions that Jesse had. He even said something about, he was talking about about kids changing their genders, and he says up to the doctors and so on and so forth. And he goes, "Well, are you circumcised?" And he goes, "Well, yeah, but I mean, what does that have to do with it? Being circumcised? What does that have to do with changing your gender? Cutting off your privates? That wasn't the same thing." But this guy was just all out in left field. I thought Jesse did a good job, but at the same token, this guy here, he talking about, when you want to have a conversation with somebody, you have to let the other person speak. I mean, you can speak and you can ask questions and so on and so forth, but you have to let the other person speak. You have to let him ask the question, especially if he's the one that's doing the interview. So, but I started thinking, and a friend of mine had come over earlier in the day, and we talked a little bit about that, about socialism, and how this has never worked, and all these, we've talked about this till we're blue, okay, no pun intended, but till we're blue in the face. But all these blue states and blue cities, they're pushing this Democrat socialism. And they're going after the incumbents, the Democrat incumbents that are there, and they're pushing them out of the way and trying to run these guys here, so they can push this socialism idea. They want a 32-hour work week. I mean, what is a 32-hour work week? Everybody wants to work overtime. I mean, at least when I was looking at, I was always looking for overtime. My job, though, it actually consists of overtime on a regular basis. But I think most people want to do that. Most people wanted to have overtime. So they want 32-hour work week. They want health care for all. They want to abolish ICE. They want to abolish the police. They want to get rid of the Senate. They have all these outrageous ideas. There's no policy, though, to do anything better for the United States except giving people free stuff. But we started talking about this socialism, and he says, we've already had a form of communism here in the United States. Well, how do you figure? That's we know what communism is, but never really thought too much about it. But COVID-19, that whole thing, you had to stay 6 feet away from one another. You had to wear a mask. You had to stay at home. The kids couldn't go to school. You had to shut down your businesses. You couldn't have people come in. You couldn't have restaurants that were open that were, where people are going to be sitting down close to one another. That's a form of communism. The government took over in Joe Biden's government anyway. It wasn't what Trump wanted. Trump figured 2 weeks to a month, maybe shut down for a short period of time until they got a handle on this virus. But Joe Biden went the next step, and he just shut everything down. Of course, that's how he got elected, because no one was able to even vote. They had all mail-in voting. So all this stuff just threw everything into chaos. And that's all was a form of communism. And you think about it, the government controlled everything, controlled every move you made, put the fear of death into all of us, that we were going to die from this virus. This virus is going to kill all of us. And no one really knew what the hell was going on. And now we find out more and more. There are some of us, like myself, I never did take the vaccine, didn't want the vaccine. That I got COVID, and I got the immunities, and I never got sick again. But the whole thing is, that's a form of communism. I never really looked at it from that standpoint, but it was. The government was taking over them. The government was telling us everything we needed to do, and we had to follow their lead. We had to follow the experts, Fauci, Redfield rather, and Birch. But you know what? Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birch, they were kind of on the same page. I don't know. Birch was kind of, I didn't really know too much how she felt, but she was kind of following Fauci's lead. But Dr. Redfield, he said, "Wait a minute, this isn't working. This this whole thing. And I think he actually, I think he actually thought this was more of a communist way of operating, and he wanted out of this. And of course, you've seen what happened. You've seen the Fauci diaries. You've seen how he wrote everything down, and he admitted to pretty much everything that they did wrong. But that's a form of communism. So we've actually had communism. You actually can look at this. And I'm talking about, those of you that, I said it in my last podcast, you didn't get to finish high school, or maybe didn't even get to start high school coming out of grade school. Depending on where you were at that time, how old you were, it all depended on how far your education went from that point on. Now, of course, if you're wealthy, if your family was wealthy, well, then they did other things. They did things to keep you in school. But those of us that didn't have the funds to educate their kids, maybe homeschool or whatever they had to do to keep them educated, they missed a big part of their education during that period. Part of their end of grade school, maybe the beginning of high school, or into high school, going into college. There was a lot of education lost there, and a lot of money lost. People shutting down businesses, losing businesses, people dying, not being able to go to their funerals, not being able to go seeing people that were ill because maybe they had COVID-19. They didn't want to spread it anymore. This was all a communistic way, in my view, to control everything. Now, that's the way that you want it. This socialism isn't far from that. That's what they want. We can't have this happening. We have to pass the Save America Act. I've said that for at least a month now, or longer. Every podcast I talk about the Save America Act. We have to pass that. We have to get legal voting in line. You have an ID. You have to prove that you're a citizen, so on and so forth. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think, like I said, 85% of the people, whether you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, whoever you are, you want this. Everybody wants this. But that's a form of communism. I never really thought about it in that standpoint. From that standpoint, you think about it. The government was in control of everything. And it wasn't just our government. Look at all the governments around the world that were in control of everything. There were some countries that actually put you in your apartment or your home and weld the door shut so you couldn't go out. I mean, there were some that were like that. Now, I don't, that's all government control. And you have the elites that can do whatever they want. Like, look at Gavin Newsom. He went to, what was that, the French Laundry, that restaurant that he got to go to. It was a really expensive restaurant, wearing no mask. And, Fauci got this thing where you had to wear one mask, and it was two masks, and it got to where they were wearing three masks. Well, then, a mask wasn't really going to do any good. It doesn't really matter. It wasn't going to help you in any way. But so they were coming up with all sorts of ideas and all sorts of things that we had to follow their lead. This was the government control. Government has always been in control. And I mean, from a certain standpoint. And if you think about it, a friend of mine and I were talking the other day about this Nick Shirley Act here in California. When they shut down, that's the First Amendment. You have the right to go. I mean, if he wanted to go investigate, now, okay, he was an independent investigator, independent journalist, an independent journalist going investigating different things. Well, that has to do with our tax dollars. We should be able to do that. And now that Bonta, the Attorney General here in the state of California, his wife is the one, she's part of the assembly. She's the one that put this bill out. And Gavin Newsom, I guess it was Saturday, he signed the bill. It's going to go into play early in 27, and to where you can't do this. And if you were to investigate, an investigative journalist, if you're going to investigate a certain thing like any kind of fraud, this hospice, what they found in Minnesota, they also found it here in California. They go and investigate this. He can get fined $4,000 up to $10,000. That's what, this is the First Amendment. You got the right to do this. You got the right to invest, do whatever. That's part of freedom of speech. And California's taking that away from you. Again, that's part, if you want to say that's part of a socialist way, communism. I mean, you think about it. They're taking away part of our our Constitution. And when you have like all these guys like Said and this running for Senate in Michigan, and you got these others like this is Rahman that's running for mayor in Los Angeles. I mean, they can't even they won't even swear to the Constitution. They'll hold up, I mean, you don't have to put your hand on the Bible. If you don't feel comfortable with that, it's fine. But don't put your hand on the Quran. You can't, like Mondami did in New York when he took over being the mayor of New York. Put his hand on the Quran. The Quran has nothing to do with our laws. Just like that Saeed when he was when Jesse Waters was interviewing him, he was saying, "Don't you have a right? You have a right to your religion and to administer your religion however you want to do that. Have you want to." Well, yeah, you do have a right to religion, sure. But you don't have a right to Sharia law. Sharia law does not exist in the United States. We have laws here. That's part of the Constitution. We have laws here. That's part of we the people, okay? You have to adhere to that. If you want to live here, you want to be part of this country, you want to be part of our Senate or Congress, you have to swear an oath to our Constitution. If not, then you can't hold office. And there should be if there's not already, there should be a law that says you have that you have to do that. And so far, I don't know that that's something that's in place. Well, we'll see, okay? But you think about that. That was COVID-19. That was actually communistic, the way they were, the way they took charge, where the government took over. That was communism. They made us do what we had to do. We lost money. We lost our time in school. We lost our loved ones. We didn't get to see them when they were ill and passing away. We didn't get to all that stuff. We were held from doing that because of the virus that was done in the Wuhan lab. Everybody knows that's where it came from. Dr. Fauci even admitted to it when he did his diaries. That's why this guy here, I mean, he should be in jail. That's it. And I've said it before, well, who wants to put an 85-year-old man in jail? Well, you know what? He did the crime, put him in jail, do the time. Anybody else, they would do the same damn thing. You think about that, okay? You think about that. You think of everything I just said. Socialism is going to eventually, that's what they want. That's what their agenda is. That's we've got to do it now. We've got to push all these socialist Democrats. We got to push them out. They can't hold office because eventually that's what's going to happen. It happened in Europe. It happened in England and France and in Spain. This stuff is going on, and they're pushing back and pushing us out. These, just like the Muslims in Dearborn, Michigan. They're trying. I mean, you have to. Was it 5 times a day? They have to stop, and everybody gets their carpets out and swears on it. I mean, you know what? That's their religion. Do that in your mosque. Don't do it out there shut everything else down. That's a form of communism also. Think about it. How they operate in Dearborn, Michigan. That's a form of communism also. So anyhow, you think about that. Give me a comment. Please subscribe and share and let me know what you think, okay? So this is Coffee Break. We'll see you next time.